Three, two, one. Hello, everybody. I'm Nicole Sackage, and we're here for our second full-length interview of a series that we're calling Artists and Aliens, or Aliens and Artists. I don't know how if we've decided on a full name, but I'm here with Grant Cameron tonight, and our guest is Doug Auld. And if anybody has been tracking down art in the UFO world, I know they've come across Doug. So I'm just going to hand it over to Doug, and if Grant has anything to say, he can jump in too. But how are you tonight, Doug?
Oh, okay. I'm doing pretty good. It's on the East Coast and 10:30 at night, so it's not that I get to bed this early, but it is a little bit of a groggy time. So, and I've been up since very early, so some questions and kicking it along would be fine, but I'm doing fine. Thanks very much.
How are you doing tonight, Grant? Are you awake?
I'm usually awake at this time of night. I'm kind of excited to talk to Doug because I guess of all the experiencers, probably Doug would be at the top of the list in terms of the quality of stuff that he does, where people go, ooh, ah. Mm-hmm. So it'd be interesting to hear his background story of how he got into the UFO deal and why an artist like him. First of all, how did you get into art? Because you didn't start in art. And then how did you get into the UFO field from art?
Well, my background was very mechanical. I mean, I was a guy that was into mechanics as a kid. So if you fast forward from being a kid on up, it's nature, frogs, turtles, snakes, catching everything I could in the pond, plus grabbing golf balls off the golf course and selling them back to the golfers as they lost them. Everything was there. And then I built mini bikes and go-karts and things and raced around. And I was a very, very hands-on. And somewhere early in my life, I realized I'm not a book guy. And I think it was times that nobody really diagnosed dyslexia. And so when I was going to school in the late 50s, early 60s, if you can believe there's such a time that far long ago. I don't think anybody figured that out. I was in Catholic school, and the nuns would just smack me on the wrist if I couldn't do something. And I think I daydreamed a lot. I looked out the window, and I always remember having a problem reading because I just couldn't retain or follow along or whatever. So I think it actually ended up contributing to my mechanical or spatial skills in a certain way. And they talk about dyslexia and art. Certainly didn't hurt because I seem to be able to make faces and paint and so on. So, I mean, my dad had a car dealership, and I was going to work for him at the car dealership. I was going to be I was going to be an auto mechanic and eventually own his dealership. And I'd be a car guy all my life. Alcoholic car guy, because that's what ends up happening. My brother, when I was in technical high school to go to school for mechanics, and my brother picked me up, or he said, I'm coming to get you this week at the end of the week, and we're going to go see the band The Doors play in Philadelphia. And I'm like, The Doors, I think I may have heard of them. I wasn't really too much up on it. And when he took me there and we saw this concert of The Doors, that kind of was the jettison into the music world and the world of art. That's how I got involved in being interested in doing something other than the mechanics I was doing. And long story short, I had that. And then my brother suggested that we go to see Salvador Dali in the Cleveland Museum. And we went to the Cleveland Museum. So I went from The Doors to Dali. And I'm like, all right, this is cool stuff, and it looks a lot more interesting than fixing cars. And actually, that's how I got into the creative world. And I took, I'm very good. I always felt I'm very good at problem solving. I call it problem solving more than anything. It's like, all right, how do you do this? How are you going to start? You got to problem solve it. You got to figure in painting, is the canvas, is this topic going to be taller or wider? That would be your first question, when you have a subject. So I started working as a realist because I really liked the idea of locking details down. I liked the idea of working really hard on something where if I said that's a portrait of my mother, it was my mother. It wasn't my grandmother or my brother. It was really my mother. It looked just like her, you know? And I like that criteria. And I think it's one of the reasons why I took to realism. Realism were the paintings that inspired me at museums. When I went to see art, I was attracted to portraits mostly. And I liked a lot of different realism, but portraiture really captivated me. And there's something about a one-on-one portrait that was most captivating to me. You know, you could see a great classical painting of 20 or 30 figures, but when I saw a one-on-one portrait, a Rembrandt or a Velázquez, it really mesmerized me. Something about the psychological level of that really got to me. So I took to portraiture. And now you got to understand that all along with this, in my early 20s, I'm also juggling music and art, and so I'm juggling the two of them along and trying to keep them both going. And in fact, I knew a very famous artist at the time named Chuck Close, who's in every major museum in the world, and he and I met through my brother and stuff, and he said, you'll always struggle with the problem that you can run from one topic to the other. When music gets tough, you're going to run to art. When art gets tough, you're going to run back to music. And he may have been right, because single-mindedness is a very good recipe for success. If you only do one thing and you do it repetitively over and over, like he did, he had learning disabilities and various things where he couldn't participate in sports. He was eventually ended up in a wheelchair, but his whole life was, and he was dyslexic, and in school he would draw the subject that everybody was writing about. So that's how he managed to get through school, and he became a fantastic, amazing painter. So I guess this is all going along, and now let's enter where the UFO topic would enter into this. Is that also along this, for some reason, I have been completely obsessed with, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, One Step Beyond, every show you can think of, all the great sci-fi stuff. That always fascinated with me. It wasn't cartoons, and it wasn't like comic books. I hated stuff like that. I liked, the Twilight Zone. I liked somebody opening my mind up to think about something like that, or the Outer Limits. And I can't exactly say why I was so fascinated with it, but the sky, stars, staring into the sky, everything about outer space, and wondering, like, what are we doing here? And there's got to be so much more, came along with everything in my life. And I guess then at some critical mass, I started to look more and more into ufology. And I think the internet really helped for me to get into that. I wasn't a guy that really went to the library and got books, but I just started to go somehow one way or the other. I can't even really place my finger on it. I started to look at UFO stuff, and I guess one thing led to another, and I started to get onto different sites and different people. And Grant, you were one of the main people that I got onto and got to know. And of course, there was Chris Bledsoe's sighting and a whole bunch of other sightings that I started to learn about. And I hunted people down, and I said, this is incredible. You got to be kidding me. This really happened? Like, this is incredible. And, you'd want to do the litmus test on these people and go, are you sure you're not making this up? This is real? Because if this is real, this is a game changer to everything we think. Everything I, think is real, it's got to start to really get questioned. So it all started like that. I don't know if all this is making sense, but that's how it all got going.
Now we're doing a series on musicians, artists, and UFOs, because there seems to be a tie-in. That there's a lot, like you're talking about dyslexic. I think Tom DeLonge is dyslexic. There's quite a few that fall into this pattern. Do you think that this is a random thing, or do you think, like, when it comes down to, do you think you're an experiencer? Do you think you're meant for this, or you just fell into this?
Those are great questions. I learned that I'm O negative blood, and someone told me that has something to do
So
with
am
like.
I. Good. That's
Yeah,
good. That's a good sign.
all right. That's why we get along. Uh, and a lot of people have to understand when I speak. A lot of times, I will never really give a definitive what I believe in or not, because I'm one of these people that seems to be able to open a category in my head where the I don't knows go into it. I don't need an answer. If I'm perplexed by something or something is put in front of me, and I'll just go, wow, I don't know. So it's not like, wow, I totally believe, or wow, I totally don't believe.
Yeah.
And a lot of what my new show is about, which we'll talk about at some other time, dovetails into this whole idea of belief systems, because ultimately, if you don't actually experience something yourself, if you actually don't do it or see it or have it happen to you, you're relegated to a form of belief. I mean, you have to, if Joey down the street tells me he saw something happen, I either am going to believe him or I'm not. And most of all our lives are occupied with belief, because we can't be on site to witness everything. It's impossible. So I think that it's very hard for me to decipher what you just asked me, because I feel something is driving when I let myself go and absorb myself into what I'm doing, whether it's music or painting.
Yeah.
Because my feeling is I can't do it. My feeling is I don't know how to paint. And I'm not saying this just to be, clever. I actually really feel I don't know how to paint, or I don't know how to play a song. How am I going to do that? And it's a weird feeling, because it feels like something comes through me and I start to do what I do, and the answers come. And I often use an analogy of imagine having to run across a pond where there's these stones, and you jump to one and you jump to another and you jump to another. It's not like you have a map of where all the stones are. It's like a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Or from one thing to the next, and it carries you along. And I very much feel like that in a lot of things that I do.
Okay, so let me ask you this: like you're sort of an older gentleman, like I am. So in 1975, I remember when I had my first sighting, it was definite that UFOs were a random experience. You only saw one UFO. It's not like we have the idea, we know you're a lifer, you see them all your life. So when you saw your first UFO, what did you think? I mean, suddenly you're interested in sci-fi stuff, and all of a sudden you're looking up and here's a UFO.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating thing to come upon something that you're like, I'm really trying to not call this a UFO. And of course, we understand that a UFO only means unidentified flying object. It doesn't mean it's from anywhere.
Yeah.
And it could be a mistaken item, and it could be a misidentification, and I'm always present to that. But I mean, I'm not one of these believers that, you have to be an expert colonel from the Air Force to recognize. No, that's nonsense. You can pull anyone off the street and go, what the heck is that? And they'll be like, holy crow. And I ran into things like this. And you're studying them, you're seeing them not move. You see wind moving the clouds. They're not moving. They're perfectly still. There's no sound. They defy an explanation. And still, I'm not saying that it's necessarily from anywhere, but we all have to kind of come to the elimination of insects, birds, anything in nature that will fly. Eliminate all them. Then we got to think to man-made objects. What will fly in the man-made world? Planes, helicopters, drones, this, that, and everything else. And once you've gone through the gamut of everything, you're like, I don't know. That's completely non-explainable. And then you call in some so-called experts or some MUFON or whatever people, and they spend a month on it, and they can't come up with it either. Now you would think they'd come up with the answer that it's a bunch of balloons. And then you're like, really, a bunch of balloons that could anchor themselves in the sky and not move? It's a pretty good balloon, Can you let balloons go and have them do that? I mean, and so not all of them, Grant, but I have had circumstances where there's been what, a little bit more like a spiritual quality to the sighting, where it's not just an object and I'm seeing it. There's been, and the one particular orb that I always show that's got like a pearlescence quality to it was just a marvelous experience. It came over me, moved very slow. It was very high in the sky. It had to be large, based on my evaluation of distance. It had to be something like the size of a Volkswagen or, a car, a big car or something. And it moved, and I was sitting on the church steps and I looked straight up and it stopped straight over me. And I was like, oh my God, it was a crystal clear day. Photograph. I'm looking at it. And then I looked down to just do something for the camera and look back up and it was gone. It didn't fly away. I didn't see it down the, it was just gone. And that has always left me a spiritual, for lack of a better way of describing it, spiritual note in me from with that sighting.
Wow. Go ahead.
So,
I was nodding along. So much of that sounded familiar to even my own first sighting story, just the way you described it as pearlescence, only mine was kind of green, but
yeah.
And I was also chuckling because you mentioned Catholic school and, that time in our searching and ufology when we still go back to what's rational. This has to be something, explainable, like you were just talking about, I laugh a lot because I compare it to that Catholic guilt that all Catholics sometimes have, even when you're not Catholic anymore.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that sighting rationale, where that's our ufology version of Catholic guilt. We always want to take it there until we're ready to have that leap of faith, like you also spoke of, and admit that there's that spirituality side to it. Because I also hate throwing any kind of religious tag on the experiences that I've had, but it's also hard not to acknowledge that meaningful experience. So that was your first sighting. How many sightings have you had?
Well, that wasn't actually my first sighting. That was the one that was actually most spiritual to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say I've got, if I was to think about the night vision film that I've gotten, some strange, amazing things that happened to me that I still can't figure out. One of them being a crystal clear night, bright stars. I'm in Mexico. I'm on the rooftop of a condo in Mexico. And I'm watching this one star. And it's because it happens to be a nice, bright star, but everything looks like a star. And I'm watching it for a good period of time. I think I was smoking a cigar at the time with my friend, John. We're looking, I'm talking to him and I'm looking over his head and, it's the sky. And it shut off. I mean, what star shuts off? It just shut off and that was gone. That was it. It was like a bright star that just blinked out. Yeah. And I've thought of that ever since. I was on the rooftop in Mexico with my girlfriend and we saw a design of a boomerang with beautiful glide through the sky. You couldn't tell if it was all connected or 7 or 8 separate objects, just like stars, exactly like stars, that if anyone wasn't watching the sky and was just walking around the street, they would just think there's stars if they didn't take a good look. Totally silent, fly right above us and glide off into the distance. Probably one of the most beautiful things I ever saw. Totally perplexing to me. No sound, no engine. I can't remember if I could see through it or not.
What year was that?
I'm sorry, Grant.
What year was that?
I'm going to guess 10 to 12 years ago. Okay. Just a guess.
Yeah, I didn't know you had seen a triangle because we had our panel on triangle.
I was holding back on that for all these years for tonight, just so because I want to bring new material, Grant. Really, really marvelous. There's a few things that happen in Mexico now on my daytime sightings. So This is very important. This is my intuition that tells me that when you are primed and intending to see something, and you stay in that mode of intention, things appear. And when you leave that mode of intention and get preoccupied and whatever it is, I don't know what it's, I don't want to say it's spiritual. I don't know what it is. But I noticed that when I'm really not thinking about ufology or things or sightings anymore, I never see anything, even though I'm looking up in the sky and everything like that. But when I'm like going out every day with a camera around or camera near me or my cell phone, and I'm looking around and I walk through the street and I'm looking around, not that it's going to happen right away, but sure enough, all of a sudden things start to happen. And one of the knacks I have is, even though I don't hear it, is I'll look like that right over my shoulder and there'll be a jet plane flying overhead, or I'll look over there and there'll be a little plane. So I'll start to notice that first. I'll start to notice that I'm intuitive about something being in the sky, and eventually I start to see things. And since it's easier in the summer, it's either easier when it's nice out and when it's warm out and so on. And of course, COVID has changed a lot of things in our lives. But so I basically wanted to bring that up because I think intention is a big part of what we're talking about, and how that ties in is a mystery, but maybe you're putting yourself in alignment with this experience.
Yeah, I've had my fair share of thoughts on intention as well. Leading up to my second sighting, it was that, leap of faith into being thankful for this process, trying to explore different contact modalities. And yeah, I mean, I was shocked as the last 25 years I had gone out with cameras, I had returned to my spot, tried all these very technical things to try to regain that kind of contact. And yeah, it wasn't until I had a leap of faith and really started to explore things like Grant writes about, the contact modalities. How do these things relate? I think you and I wound up in one of Grant's rabbit hole sessions, and I think the topic of discussion was it out of body experiences on that one, where we were both kind of just listening in as participants? And
It could be.
what kind of paths have you explored, trying to dive into this side of ufology and how these subgroups kind of connect underneath this spirituality experience?
Well, in the last year, I put a ton of time into near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. In fact, every night I have a reader in my computer. You know how those little electronic voices read something for you on your readers? Somehow that's mesmerizing to me and puts me to sleep, which is wonderful. So what I do is I'll download off of NDERF. That's the website I go to. NDER, Near Death Experience Reference something. Yeah. And John and Jody Long, I think their website, wonderful people. I've donated to them. It's a great site. I'll pick different stories. I'll copy and paste, put it in my little reader, get ready to go to bed, and I'll play it. And a lot of times I'll hear the whole thing. A lot of times I'll fall asleep before half of it's over, which provides two services. One, I'm listening to something fantastic. The other is it's putting me to sleep. And I'll wake up 3 o'clock in the morning because I never sleep through anything. I sleep in little stages. I'll wake up again and I'll replay it again and I'll catch more. And that's how I usually spend my night. So Nicole, to answer your question, I started studying that, and most recently I read both books, read on audible.com, both books by Robert Monroe from the Monroe Institute. And Robert Monroe, I mean, this is like, I wish if I could do one thing in my life, I would have these experiences that this man managed to have, where he was able to lay down, go to bed, fall asleep, get into a vibration, and actually roll his being out of his body and travel. I can't think of anything greater. I'm trying to get out of this life as it is. That has got to be the greatest feeling, to be able to. And he talked about intention. He talked about your prayers, your intention, And in the Monroe Institute, they would have mantras and things that they would ask the beings, the spirits, the guides, to help me along with this. I want to have this happen. And I never really thought about stuff like that. I'm like, really, that's just make believe. You can't like wish for something and it will happen. And a lot of success happens with them. And I think that I was doing that. Nicole, you were doing that anyway, whether you were seeing things or not. You were putting a continual intention out. And I have that intention also. I have a continual intention to have these kinds of events happen to me. And so I think when I walk out the door and I just go like this, a lot of times there it is. I mean, how could I catch 12, 13 objects in the daytime on camera that are proven not to be just a balloon or something by sheer happenstance? There's something else going on. So that's how I look at it.
I agree with you there. And intention and perseverance too. I mean, you really do have to keep trying, and that willingness to explore these different avenues that maybe 10, 12 years ago, definitely not 20, 30 years ago, you know, the idea of the paranormal and ufology being together in these ways still confuses people. So I think when we come across these bridges and experience and can relate that out to the community, I think that helps a lot. And so you've said this is all kind of a spiritual experience, and I know Grant has a slideshow ready. How did you begin tying it in with your artwork and choosing that form of inspiration? I mean, the whistleblowers is great. There's so many familiar faces in it, but what made you want to start expressing this via your painting?
Well, once I got into the ufology world and its bloodlines out to things like black ops and all sorts of like agency stuff that has to do with the government cover-ups, John Lear, blah blah blah. Just keep going through everything. I met Robert David Steele, ex-CIA guy. Met him. I met a lot of the people that I painted. And some of the people contacted me, which was kind of exciting. I wanted to take, I've always wanted to paint realistic, but I didn't want to just paint flowers and people and cars and objects. And after a while you go, wow, I can do that. And that's nice. And it's nice art. And it can give a wow factor to people when you paint chrome. Like when you paint chrome of the front end of a car, people are like, how did you do that? That's because I chrome paint. And it's like, no, it's just blue next to red, next to white, next to, it's doable when you know how to do it. And I wanted to do something with my skills that would say something about my interest in this topic, and also to honor or make comment to people in general, the average person that's out in the world, not the ufology world. The ufology world is a small world, and I have no need to preach to the ufology world. They already are in it and they already know what's going on. I wanted to create the Whistleblower series so that it would hang in a museum, a gallery, of this or that, to the average person that would walk in the room, go down the row of these portraits and go, who the heck is that? Or who is that? Maybe they would jot a name down. And maybe if they jotted just one name down and they brought it home and they Googled it and they got in there, then they're going down the rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to find out that, oh, he's next to this person involved in that, and he was part of this, and and then it becomes something really, quite something. So that's really what my intention was.
With Grant starting the slideshow.
Yeah.
Explain what the Whistleblower series is for people who don't really know, because Nicole and I know, but for people who don't know.
Well, it's a group of people that, in my estimation, have put themselves out into the world and put themselves on the line, their reputations on the line, be they correct or not correct. I've never vetted any of these people. It's not like I went and took a look at everybody and said, first I'm going to totally study to know whether these people are 100% correct or not. That wasn't my interest. My interest was to take a group of people that have put themselves out into the world in such a vocal manner that they've taken a stand on something. And why did they take a stand on something? Why would they be so sure of themselves? Or, I mean, how many are con artists? I don't know. How many are completely 100% genuinely real? I don't know. I don't know about all that stuff. All I'm asking is, here's what they're doing. This is what they're saying. This is what they're claiming. Their claims are very compelling. And I wanted to do 100 of them because I wanted to make a broad statement about people in black ops, people in ufology, people in medicine, people in pharmaceuticals, people in all sorts of whistleblowing, industrial accidents, whatever it is. I just wanted to go across the gamut and paint these portraits, small portraits, all done in one day to maybe one to 2 days, fast. Very, very reactionary, not labored, not overly detailed, but show the paint, show that they're paintings, and just make a statement like that. And that's how I started them.
You almost got it in a gallery. What happened there?
Well, I'm not a fan of the art world. I'm really not. I'm not very good in the art world. I'm not very good in the business world, period. I don't like the art world. I've always sold my paintings privately. I've been very fortunate to skip along like that. I haven't overextended myself in the world financially. And to me, I always wanted the freedom. My problem with galleries, and I was in many galleries in the past, and I had a lot of things offered to me. The problem is I don't want to have to go. I don't want a gallery director saying, Doug, we love those. We need 100 more. I have no interest in doing like what someone tells me to do. That's why I'm not very good at commissions. When someone commissions me to do a painting, not to say that I can't do it, but there's something, that magic that comes through me isn't there. Now it's a job. But if I'm determined to do something from my own spirit, all the answers come. And not every painting's great. A lot of them are like, who cares? Some work, some don't. But collectively, the 100 have a power behind them that an individual portrait doesn't.
I want you to explain this. Talk to me about this photo here. This here.
Oh, okay. That's nothing other than the fact that these children in Zimbabwe, no, it's not Zimbabwe, it's Uganda. This is an orphanage of children that I support. I send money to this orphanage. And I told Mugalu, the gentleman who runs the entire orphanage, I told him to get the kids to draw, make sure that they draw, make drawings. And they were drawing animals and all sorts of stuff. And all I did, a lot of people are confused about why I posted this. I don't know where the original image came from, where they would have drawn this, but all I did was ask him to ask the children, tell the children I like spaceships and UFOs, and maybe they could draw me some spaceships. So the children drew these 2 spaceships for me. That's all it is. It wasn't that they saw them. They just drew them.
Wow. It's fascinating. One of the paintings you were really famous for is this one here. Can you talk a little bit about this and our common friend, Chris Bledsoe? Can you talk what happened here?
Yeah. Well, Chris's story was one that was very riveting. I found it to be very authentic and riveting. Again, I can't, what I believe, someone else won't believe. Someone will go, oh, you got to be kidding me. You believe that guy? I did. And I went there, I met him. And especially in the earlier days, before a lot of attention got put onto him. And he kept telling me, as wild and crazy and amazing as the story was down at the river and all the things that happened with the ufology that day, he kept telling me the lady is what the sighting is all about. And I'm thinking, it's amazing that he's spending so much time on that. And why would he be doing that? And there must be a good reason for it. And he said, Doug, you have the skills and you could be the person that paints the lady. And I said, I don't do that kind of art. I'm a studio artist. And what I mean by that is I usually have a model I usually have a still life. I usually have a subject that I'm going to work from. I usually don't make things up in my mind. I don't make UFO paintings up in my mind or this or that. I tend not to be attracted to that kind of art. I don't like sci-fi art. I don't like any of that stuff. I don't like all the reptilian paintings, all the stuff that's going on. It's not for me. I'm more of a classical art person. And I debated whether I was going to paint that story he told me for one solid year. One solid year. He told it to me, said, I don't know. Let me think about it. Let me think about it. Let me think about it. And it took me a year to decide to dive in. And I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do my best at it. And I don't know, it must have taken 3 or 4 months to make that piece. And I integrated things from the story and put it all in that one piece. And to me, that as best my interpretation was what he saw. Now, he loved it, and he told me, of course, the face is different, but how could I ever know? I didn't ask him to describe exactly everything about this being. I asked him to just describe the scene, and he said it floated above me. The hands were up like this. It had a bright bluish white glow. She had a bright glow to her, like a blue light, and she was a few feet off the ground. A bull came charging out of the woods, so I put the bull there, and of course, the owl and the UFO signify kind of the whole story. And that was my best effort at trying to render that story from that sighting.
Wow. This was kind of interesting. Talk a little bit about, because I was amazed when I saw the photo of Joe Wood here. It looked almost identical. You had an experience with her. Can you talk about that? Maybe talk a little bit about your putting Chris Bledsoe and all this stuff in a musical.
Well, I didn't, first of all, I didn't know about that. Yes, Joe Wood interviewed me. Yes, and I think you actually hooked me up with that interview. Yeah. And Joe Wood interviewed me, and at the time I talked to her about what I do, my musical was in early stages and was still being written and so on. It just happens to be, whether you want to call it coincidental or whatever, it just happens to be an image that I saw posted on your site that a lot of people thought was very reminiscent of the lady painting. Yeah. So, but it has no other tie-in. I have no other tie-in. I didn't talk to her about it. I didn't ask her to do it. There's no other tie-in about it like that. So then it's a matter of, do we believe in coincidences? I don't know.
And she may attend your opening of your musical, which has Chris Bledsoe and a bunch of other shady characters in it.
Well, if I wanted to put shady characters in it, I'd have you. Yes, no, I do. Well, I want people to understand my musical called Hypnota is a fictional story based on real events. Now, when I say based on real events, real true events that I've heard, that doesn't mean that I know that those events are real. What I mean is based on events that I've learned about that people experienced. So now, again, belief comes into a lot of things. Grant, your story about Charlie Red Star, I've always believed. I've listened to you. You don't sell it. You're not looking to, I mean, when you look at people and what their motives are, you have to come to a determination yourself. Does this feel good? Does this not feel good? It's always felt good. Not every story out there, I believe. Yeah. But that felt good. And your fascination with ufology and with all aspects of ufology, not just ufology lights in the sky, but I mean the consciousness thing and the intuition thing and the intent thing and the spiritual side of it. I patterned a character after you. It's not you, but I patterned a character after you that sings a song called The Rhythm. And the rhythm is about the fact that everything is vibrating. Everything has a vibration, and music is the easiest thing to accept for us to access that demonstrates vibration. When we listen to music, we all know it's like, can't hold it in your hand, it's vibrating through the air, and we pick it up. So all the characters in my show are loosely based on 3 or 4, maybe 5 ufology stories, but the main one that I concentrate on was Nancy Tremaine. Nancy's story with Cindy made an impression on me, and Nancy made an impression on me because I've watched her and looked at her and studied her for a long time, and we became very good friends. And I really liked the story and the premise she explained to me, more beyond whether the story is real or not, but more that this is a great story for a show. This is a great premise. Two people see something, one becomes emboldened, one becomes an alcoholic. One takes it on, one doesn't have the confidence. And that's a very, very powerful thing for a show, whether it's ufology or seeing a tiger or seeing an elephant or something. It's like, I saw something and I'm determined through fate to make this, to uncover this and to figure this out. And the other person lacks confidence for some reason and is determined to quit and to, go down the hill. And that's exactly what happened with Nancy and Cindy.
Yeah, and yet she sacrificed quite a bit, which I think is a key part to her story as well. It wasn't like she became famous and sold 1 million books. And I mean, she basically, her kid, she's not allowed to see her grandchildren and all this kind of stuff, where she took a lot of flack for it and stood up and took a stand in a place where people really weren't buying the story.
Well, that's one of the metrics that you have to look at. And it's not that I'm trying to say that every ufology or UFO witness has to have some suffering life. It's not like that. But when you study somebody and you see that, wow, I mean, this is a bad career move, like claiming that this happened to you. And if a skeptic wants to say, she's just trying to be famous and sell books, great. You know what it's like to try to sell books. I mean, she's living in a low-income housing place that she can barely subsist.
Yeah, and then when she made $50, they took it off her payment, her subsidy payment from this sort of stuff. One of the people you have in your show that you're sort of becoming famous for is this here. So talk a little bit about this. And Leah is a painter as well, right? So she has this connection as well.
Yeah, well, it was an amazing kind of come together that we became friends. And I had heard about the Pandolfis and Ron, of course, and
I think I dragged you into it.
I think you did, and I think the word dragged is extremely appropriate here. I think you dragged me into it, but it's almost a thing of fate. And Leah and I talk about it all the time. We've become such good friends, and we became so connected through many more things other than the obvious. A lot of people in the beginning really accused me of, you just want to get in there and get the scoop on UFOs. And I'd be crazy to say I'm not interested in ufology, and Ron probably knows more than anybody, but that wasn't really what it ended up being. That ended up being less of the topic, and it ended up more about just like our views on life and fascinating conversations and quantum physics and raising a child and so many other things we started talking about. But it's become a problematic relationship from a lot of different points of view, because people just make associations in their mind that if you know this guy, you must be part of the CIA, or if your friend, it's as if the Pandolfis can't have friends. They're not allowed to have friends. And so now that I'm friends with them, I think a lot of people don't trust me. A lot of people don't know what I'm doing. I think they're gonna make associations to Ron, to me, that are not true, but there's no way to prevent it, because they're just going to go where they want to go, and they're going to assume what they want to assume without any evidence, just by association. And that's just the way it's going to be. So, but my experience with them up to this point, 3 or 4 years or whatever it is now, is they've only treated me like gold.
Yeah, and I think I've heard that from other people, like I knew Katerina and stuff, and people would say the same thing. When you actually get to know them, they're not what you think they are. They're actually, like, he loves her more, like he treats her like a princess and all this kind of stuff. But the aspect I wanted you to deal with is, I've seen her art. She's actually a pretty good artist. So have you ever talked about art with her and this sort of, is there a connection? Does she see something special in art or that sort of thing? Because you'll see them as the drone stuff, but she has this artistic side to her, and I guess they want you to sort of train Kashmir with art or with these aspects of a life that are more than just the sort of the rational analytical.
Yeah, I think as friends, we are committed to helping each other. So I bring my toolbox of skills to their house, and I help them with everything. I'll help Aaliyah with painting, with the drawing method. I'll say, all right, how are we going to do? Let's make a demonstration. I made a demonstration of a painting, start to finish, right in front of her. We put a cast or a picture in the corner, and I set up the canvas. I said, here's how you could go about it. It's one of the ways. It's one of the ways that I paint. You know, with a paper towel and a whole bunch of things that people would say, what, a paper towel? You got to be crazy. Paper towel, turpentine, brown paint, blah, 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 blah. Within 10 seconds, I already have like something already ready to go, you know? And it's just methods that I discovered. And this is what people can help each other with. They do the same. Most recently, if anybody has seen my blog, hypnota.com, Aaliyah was a very, very instrumental person in helping me get my blog up for my show. She was good on Wix, and she knew how to design it, and we worked together, and she put a lot of time into it. And I'm really grateful to her for the help she's been in getting that going. And it's not a matter of, you know, watching the clock for who does what for who, but I'm there to help them in anything. Ice skating, we all go to the rink, and Kashmir and I skate, and, you know, I'll skate out on the rink, and, you know, and writing or painting or music. I'm there for them. And Aaliyah's got a love of the arts. She played violin for a while. I think she's going to play piano. She paints, she writes. So she's a very creative person, and she wants to pursue those things. And if I can help her find a method, I will offer it.
Wow. It's beautiful. It's inspirational too. And it's rare in life where we can come across somebody to mentor, and it's special, and you know it's going to change their life in a positive way. So I'm amazed by that. And then, of course, my mind also wonders, it's like, well, all right, when you're not giving art lessons, you know, do you look at the bookshelf and see what ufology books are sitting over there? It's like, what
you know,
wild conversations do you have?
Well, you know, Ron is a very hard person to be a friend of. And I've spoken to them about this. It's plain and simply because everything I want to know is classified. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I don't like pick up the phone during the day like I do to Aaliyah, Princess Aaliyah, to Ron. I don't go, hey, Ron, what you up to? What are you working on?
Right.
You know, I can't do any of that stuff. Ron is a real, like, serious person. And he loves to laugh, and we have a great time when we're at the house, and we laugh about everything. He's a great cook. And we'll laugh about this, and they got chickens, and, you know, there's a lot of stuff that we like really enjoy. But when it comes to ufology, in fact, I think we were talking ufology more in the first year I met him than we do now, because I kind of got on to the fact that I don't want to be a pain in the neck. I really don't. Right. I don't really want to be this guy that comes over and goes, what's the latest scoop that I can get? And I think that's where Dan Smith, who I like Dan. I just talked to him recently. I think that's where Dan really was all about, like, what can I get from them? What can I get from them? So that he could take it and do something with it and make a name for himself, or be on a blog, or, you know, you never see me. Does anybody ever really see Doug posting what Ron said?
Yeah.
No, never.
You have shown your photos. Talk about that. You have sort of questioned them about the photos, because that question that's in your mind as well. Like, what do you think about this? Or can you give me some insight or whatever? You've had a lot of photos. So what happened there?
Well, the first time you mean my UFO photos?
Yeah.
Yeah, first time I showed Ron my UFO photos, it wasn't some sort of like look and then put the camera down, he took that laptop, he sat it on his lap, and he looked like this, and he looked like that, and he looked like this, and he looked like that. And he took quite a while to look through my photos. It wasn't like some sort of rush. And he didn't go into this kind of, well, that's obviously a pigeon and that's a balloon type of thing.
Yeah.
He really looked at them and he really took a look. And I remember when he handed the computer back to me, he didn't say much of anything except those are great photos. That's all he said. So like he didn't debunk them. It didn't mean he endorsed them, but he would have, you know, he would have taken the time to say, look, here's what I think is going on. Now, one of them, which is really perplexing, I have a film from Mexico of a bright ball that you cannot see. I was sitting on the rooftop and I had the Yukon night vision looking straight up, and there's this slow moving orb, bright in the night sky, that when you put the night vision down, there's nothing there. But there it is, but it's not there, and no sound, nothing. And it's moving really slow. And it went out. I still have it. I can share it with you sometime.
Yeah.
And it went out over the ocean, and just the slowest thing you could ever imagine. And I scratched my head over that. And Ron came up with an explanation that I never would have thought of. And that doesn't mean that it's what it is, but he kind of theorized that it could be some effort by drug runners to move drugs off of the island via some sort of dark balloon or something that would not be seen, and just carry it out over the wind. And so again, I'm open to things like that. Not everything to me has to be a UFO. You know what? And if you could debunk my UFOs and get back down to that none of them are real, I'd be fine with that too. I don't have anything
photos do you have?
invested in it. Huh?
How many photos do you have?
Well, if you went to where they are on my site, you'd probably see 8 or 10, I think, or whatever, some compilations. I remember once you were asking for UFO photos that were in conjunction with helicopters. I sent you one.
Oh yeah.
Yep. I sent you one there. I don't know, daytime shots, 8, 10 different photos. The one that's white and goes into these like cubic kind of round, but cubic things that come apart and then come back together again. That some people try to tell me those are balloons. I'm like, really now? I mean, come on. Come on.
You've seen some interesting, just as an off topic, you've seen some interesting stuff. I always like to point out that you actually saw 9/11. You saw one of the planes go into the building. So you live just across the river, right, from New York City?
Yeah, I out my window, I could see the World Trade Centers from my window. Yeah. in the distance. And the day that 9/11 happened, I happened to be on my rollerblades and I skated down towards the water to get coffee at a certain coffee shop. And I'm having coffee and someone put their head out the window and everybody was like weird. And someone said, I just heard a plane hit the World Trade Center. I'm like, what? And I grabbed my coffee and I rollerbladed down to the water's edge. And people are gathering and I'm looking at the most beautiful, clear blue day. And the wind was blowing south. So I'm up north from it. So I'm seeing a perfect gaping entrance of the World Trade Center. And I'm like, I don't know. No plane would have hit that by mistake. That doesn't look right. I'm like, no, I don't know. That was like a crazy drunk pilot or some kind of something, but something doesn't make any sense. And then I looked to the right. Newark Airport would be over to the right. And I looked to the right and I saw this. I will never forget this. It was a grayish looking plane. It didn't look white. It didn't look like an airliner to me. Now I may have remembered it wrong, or I may have seen it in weird light, but I can usually tell what a regular Boeing 737 or 27 looks like. But I remember saying to somebody, oh, look, like a military plane is coming into view to help the situation. I still had nothing. I had no idea what's going on. Why would I have said, oh, look, a military or an aid plane looks like it's going to survey the situation, and then boom. I didn't see it hit the building. It was back behind it, but I just assumed as it came in, explosion. And the second that happened, some guy dropped on the ground. He goes, oh my God, we're under attack. And everyone knew what happened there. And then I rode out the rest of the day in that area and around town, in the most surreal day, one of the most surreal days of my life. And I remember then all going to one part and we were kept away and they thought there was an attack coming in and we saw fighter jets fly by. And then I remember building number 1 falling and we were just like, it's it's impossible.
Yeah.
And then the other one fell, you know.
Last question, I'll put it back to Nicole for me. So you look back at your whole life. I mean, you've had some pretty interesting stuff. Do you think life has been worthwhile in terms of has it been a good time or experience? How do you view the whole thing?
I have to believe, first of all, with my health, I've been beyond blessed. I've had a great family. I have a wonderful son. I have good people around me, some great friends. I've taken on a lot of great interests. I've also had some experiences we didn't talk about. I had this Chandra experience up in my bedroom. I think I may have told you at one point, where this thing got behind me. And I don't know if you want to go into that. I also had this experience when I was in Mexico with my friend Charisse, when we were laying on bed at twilight in the afternoon, late in the afternoon, and an entire vision came into my head. It came in, it was like a movie started. It lasted about 15 minutes. It got bright, and it was millions of little dots breathing back and forth. It was like a glowing
You
rose.
painted it. Have you got it on your desktop?
Yeah, it's somewhere,
Yeah.
but I'd have to look. But it was amazing, and I did paint it. When I came home, I tried to paint it, but I was describing it to Charisse as we were laying there. I said, Charisse, if I keep my eyes closed, it's like a movie is showing. If I open my eyes, it's not there, and it's back again. And I talked her through the whole thing, and it slowly faded away. I've never had an experience like that again. Let me see if I can remember the title. I think The Apparition.
Yeah.
If you want to, you can email it to me and I will make it the cover art on this interview.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it. The Apparition. No, that's a movie. No, not that. I'm pretty sure it was The Apparition.
Yeah, I remember. See, you showed it. I've got it, but I don't know where it is.
One more second. I'll be quick.
Okay.
Let's see.
No. And then I said it was last question, but it's not last question. What's your theory of wow? Like in terms of life, because you've been working on near-death experiences now, UFOs. So how do you see the world? What do you, if you were to take a best guess? You don't know for sure, but
How do I see the world? I see the world that we are in a low-level, dense vibration here to experience this experience. And Grant, one of the most fascinating things that I love to talk about is the idea that everything is perfect as it is. It's a fascinating idea because we're human fixers and we all want to go out and fix the world.
Yeah.
We all want to, but I like the analogy of going to an amusement park, gates open, you came in a bus with a whole bunch of people, that's your birth. You came into the amusement park and everyone goes a different direction. Some get on the Ferris wheel, some go into the fun house, some go into the horror house. Everybody does something different. When it's all done, we all come out, the bus picks us up, we take off, and we're in this domain to experience good and bad, and those are just things we call each other. We call things because without the experience of bad, there could never be any good. Without hot, there is no cold. Without pain, there's no pleasure. So it's like we volunteered from everything I've gotten out of the near-death experiences to this day. I believe we chose our parents, came here, were born, living this deep vibration, and what we experience here seems to move us along into either, I hate to use it like school, but either you get left back and, you cheated this, you cheated that, you got to go back and kind of relive it, because a lot of the people that commit suicide are told, you don't understand the matrix of this thing. You have to complete what you were doing. You don't even understand your own value. Your value of the way it interlocks is fascinating, and you don't get it. So you're taking yourself out. It's like taking yourself out before you finished school.
So, interesting that you've got that theory, because I actually do. I don't know if it hasn't been broadcast yet, but we actually do an interview. One person's a near-death experience woman, has a near-death experience in 1970. gets thrown in face first off a motorcycle into the pavement. She has this experience. I have a guy in a float tank who has the experience, and I have a woman who's reading a book, and they all have the experience what you're talking about, where they have the vision that everything is absolutely perfect, and they were floored. They didn't even want to talk about it because they said this can't be true, and they were basically given this vision that everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's so far out because again, we're like, look, what's everybody's doing? We're all trying to fix the world. Well, I got to make the homeless person non-homeless.
Yeah,
I got to do this. I got to do that. And I think it's a beautiful thing to live. Oh, by the way, I have the image. It's called The Vision. That's how I found it.
And at the bottom of the screen, you can share the screen there. Just share the screen, and your desktop will come up.
It says the chat is disabled. Did you disable
the share
chat?
screen? The yellow thing in the middle there. Share screen.
Post disabled attendee screen sharing.
Hang on.
Well, why don't I just okay.
Okay, you should be able to do it now, I think.
Hold on. Let's see. Share screen. Yeah.
And then click on the share. That's in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. The little thing. There you go. Okay, there's your. Is that you own that island? No.
Yeah, that's where I live.
There it is. Yeah, I remember it. Now I see it. Yeah.
So this is the best guesstimate. It was so hard to explain, but it was like this thing in the middle that was angular, balanced, and beautiful. And it was just like this. And I mean, infinity. I obviously couldn't do it. I just came home and tried to do a rendering of it. Infinity, and absolute infinity of breathing of molecules or matter or whatever this thing is, was just breathing all around it. And it was one of the most beautiful things and one of the most pleasant feelings I ever had in my life was to experience this. So again, I may not have been an experiencer like I was abducted or this or that or anything else, but all you need is an experience like this to make you realize that there's something beyond what we're doing every day. There's just something beyond it.
What did I call it the other night on Spaced Out Radio? A woo slap. Everybody gets a woo slap.
Yeah. And
It's beautiful.
did you see? And do you want me to show you that that alien with the collar?
Yeah. Let's see that.
This is
It's stunning. Yeah.
This I made up. I just made it up, but I was thinking about the fact that back in Rembrandt's day, there had to be aliens, right?
Yeah.
So I made, and it was basically just to throw somebody off and say that, well, they had to relate to Velasquez in some way. So but it's just the idea that it was my comment about this has been with us since the beginning of time, and so.
How long would it have taken you to do that?
I don't know. I probably did that in a day or two.
Okay.
The paintings, the real detailed stuff that I've done. Let me see if I can find something.
Show us the car one. That was the one I kept accusing you of showing a photograph and trying to tell me you painted it. Did you paint they posted the cat today. Did you actually paint? Is that a cat or is that a photograph?
Here's the oil on canvas of the front.
This is what I keep saying. This is a photograph, man.
Yeah, that's a painting.
That's unreal.
I know. I love the reflection in the headlight too.
Yeah. And in fact, let me see if I can do it. When I first painted this, I didn't even realize that I had painted a whole sky, walkway, trees, and water. Wow. It was like it's a landscape in there. There's a landscape in there. It's all broken up. But if you blur your eyes and squint it down, you see the clouds, you see the sky, and you see sort of the walkway and everything like that. And that was fascinating to me. But I always tell everybody the hardest part of this painting was the tire. It was so hard to paint that rubber. I was like, I can't get that feeling that it's rubber. It's just, whereas the chrome and everything else seemed to work out,
Wow.
Let me see what else that I have here.
At one point you were going to do the thing where you were going to do art on, I still think you should do that, is do art on online where you sort of paint something and people get to watch you as you
Oh
set
yeah.
it up.
I think when I'm thoroughly done with my show, my musical, I think I'll probably look into that. This was the little sketch I did that I used for Hypnota. That's what
Oh,
I
yeah.
used for my own play, you know?
And where'd you get the idea? You told me. Where did that idea come from?
I just made it up, but I made up the, you know, for some reason these hats on this angle, it like threw it into like the 50s or something. But I just like the idea that it was a great way to denote the angle of heads, that everybody was below it looking up by the fact that the hats have that ellipse.
Yeah.
And it was just this idea that it was this nondescript sort of glowing entity that really didn't like have a real like definitiveness to it. And I ended up using it for the Hypnota cover, which I really like. I like it as the insignia for my blog.
Wow.
You probably never saw this. I made a landscape
Nope.
from South Africa. That's one of my landscape paintings. I don't do that too often, but my son was in South Africa and I made that for him.
Wow.
Then we have the Science Times is really one of my favorite paintings.
Yeah. You did a
That
whole
has to
series
do
of
with-
people like monks or nuns and priests. You did a series, right?
This painting ties into my work. This really ties into ufology. This brings along my religion and my upbringing. The matches say E equals MC squared on them.
I didn't know that.
The keychain is an alien keychain.
Look at that. Holy. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Holy.
He's got a little shot glass because he drinks, and he's got a cigarette. So he's a handsome, tough guy. He's a priest. And then the Science Times, the whole idea is, it says, what else lurks out there?
That's
Wow,
great.
we're getting the insight on this painting that I would never have known that.
I don't even think my family knows that.
Wow. That's incredible.
And
Perfect.
I love this painting this painting sums up a lot about what I think about and what's in my show, which is just because you're one thing doesn't mean you can't be in another world. Just because he's a person of God, so to speak, or religion doesn't mean he can't wonder what's out in the universe, doesn't mean he can't ponder alien life. It doesn't mean he can't drink. It doesn't mean he can't smoke a cigarette. We have all these kind of restrictions about who we see fitting what based on our uniform, based on our exterior. A cop, a priest walks into a place and everybody's like, oh, you can't say shit, or you got to be careful. You know.
Yeah.
And I love, that's why I did a whole series of paintings on nuns and priests and the uniform, because the uniform carries the impression that we give people, and people make up a lot of stuff based on the uniform. How many people in a commercial on TV with a white coat on suggesting that you take this pharmaceutical are believed because they have a white coat?
Yeah.
I liked your painting of the nun, and she was barefoot. And what I noticed was that she had toenail polish on.
Yeah.
I like that.
Same kind of thing. Then I don't know if you've ever seen this. Oh, this is a small version. Let me get the large version up. But this was this painting that I did that had to do with, I made this big painting. It was massive during the hostage crisis many years ago. I made this painting about an alien ship wrapping these big chains around the earth and dragging it away. And that's what that is.
I liked two from that collection. I liked The Return and Gold Digger. I thought both of those were very interesting as well.
I've dated the gold digger girl in there. Sort of. Let me see if I have. And you guys, of course, you saw the serial killer with the trick cereal.
Yes.
You saw that one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
that was pretty good. Yeah.
I ate several boxes of tricks.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's just complete.
Oh, my friend Dan Willis, who I love. Dan, he's great. Here's an in progress of Dan Willis's whistleblower painting.
Oh yeah.
And there you can kind of see how it kind of ended up,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it starts out like that. It starts out on a gray canvas. I'm doing this real quick. I'm making marks. I'm just blocking in. It's called blocking in paint in sections.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like pushing it around like clay. I don't make an accurate drawing. I never draw with a pencil. I draw with the brush. And I like to fudge the paint around and just move it around until I get what I want. So
Wow.
That's
fun.
how I put my makeup on every day.
Yeah. Here's a very rare drawing that very many people will have never seen. It's called Contradictory Me.
Oh.
Wow.
And it's like a bunch of, it's like, it was a quick little sketch in a book that I had this idea of like, my mind is just so filled with contradictions of who I think I am and what I want to be. I did this when I was a lot younger. And so I hooked up all the muscles to bones that could never work, because when you pull on one, the other one's going the other way. And, it was crazy.
Wow.
It almost has that pondering feel of the thinker to it as well.
That's
with
interesting.
The position of the head. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's got a Dali-esque, of course, kind of feel to it a little bit. But these are, let's see what else I have here. This is one that I did. This is a surrealistic painting. Yeah. Which was sort of like, get to the back of the bus, art, music, and everything. What rules the day is violence, money, hypodermic needles, bombs. This is the time we're living in. And what lives in the back of the bus is like the cello, the guitar, a lamb, flowers, paintbrushes. And then there's actually a beluga whale up here sitting on the top. That actually cracked.
That's incredible. See, you would never see that stuff. It's good you're pointing that out, because you'd see the photo in the painting. You just gloss over it. This one I've seen lots of times. Explain this one.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it's too small an image, so I don't think it will blow up properly.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one has to do with similar extremes. It has to do with the idea that even though something is extremely the opposite of something, like water and sand, they occupy the same shape. Like the moon and the sun, they occupy the same shape.
Yeah.
So I call it similar extremes. So in the world of sand and heat, the sun occupies this side. And then in the world of night and cold and cool and wet, they occupy this side, yet they match up in shape.
Wow.
Then I have another humorous one that I love, which is the playpen. Did you ever see the playpen?
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah. But
Yeah. And that's another one that basically says that here we are, human beings in this modern time. We live in a playpen. That's a city in a playpen, and we're amused with a hypodermic needle, dollar bill, violence, and weaponry power.
Yeah.
And those are like a baby. Those are our little mobiles that we play.
It's actually an honor to know you. I mean, you're like one of the best there is. I mean, wow.
Thank you. How about this one? This one was sad. I mean, this is an oil and wax painting. And this came one day from me. I was cooking clams, and I was like, I heard the clam like breathing or crying. And I was like, oh my God, I'm burning a clam alive.
Oh,
And then when I was done with, I got the clam shell, and I made this painting up that the clam has lost his life. He's coming out of the shell. He's detached from his home, and the angel is coming to rescue him, and he'll be going home.
Oh, wow.
Sad. It's a tough. I mean, look at the expression on that poor thing.
Unbelievable. People are going to love this. I mean, this is because you get the background story. You'd never pick it up by just looking at it. When you explain it, it's so meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, they're
The seahorse light bean.
What's that?
I said the seahorse light bean.
Yeah. Here's another one I was playing around with, where on the left, this is a little bit like MC Escher. On the left, it's sand dunes, and then as you move to the right, they break into wave forms,
Wow.
Just experiments, things that I was doing back then. Let's see, more classical art was, when I was doing still lifes in my apartment, I'd set up a statue and then put a little flower. I don't have a good photo of that, though. It's too small. Let's see. Let's see, something else. Dying clam. Oh, here's all the whistleblowers on the floor.
There you go.
Wow.
Let's see if I can find some really shady characters. Hold on. Because there's a couple of them in here.
Ding, ding, ding. No.
And I was so honored to get it done, but off the record, we won't say. But I mean, some people actually were not happy because you didn't give them a smile. I was kind of
Yeah.
shocked.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, a lot of times I found the source material for this imagery in interviews. So I would freeze frame a interview. Let's say David Icke or somebody was in an interview, or Jim Fetzer here. I know Jim Fetzer. He's pretty out there, and Jim Fetzer's in an interview, or I would photograph several shots of the interview and freeze frame it, and that's what I would use as my guide to create my painting. So
Did you ever get from the 100 whistleblowers? Did you ever get a call from one of the key ones that you didn't expect? I know you had a thing with Bigelow, that you'd done Bigelow.
I spoke to Bigelow's assistant, and Bigelow was very interested in his portrait. He was. I spoke to this gentleman over here. I'm blanking on his name for a second. God, he went very deep and heavy into the Sandy Hook school shooting. He was a professor of a school in Florida, and he lost his tenure and everything for questioning it.
Wow.
There's this guy here is Bradley Manning before he became Chelsea Manning.
Oh yeah.
There's our friend from who, what's his name? There's John Lear. There's Jim Mars. But I tell you, a woman reached out to me that I was really amazed with. Let me see if I can find her. Hold on. She reached out to me, and she was the one that married a colonel or a military guy who, when he drank, he had a loose lips, and he talked about the initiation in West Point. And it was a fabulous story. And she wrote me. She said, Doug, you have no idea how happy it's her, this woman here. Right there, this woman. And she said, you have no idea how honored I am and thankful I am that you took this series on. And I was like, you have no idea how honored I am that you guys did this. I'm nobody. I just painted you. She put her butt on the line and testified of the stuff that they did, the ritual rites and the homosexual sex and being put in coffins and doing all sorts of bizarre stuff with Skull and Bones. That's what it was. She was talking about Skull and Bones.
Wow.
Of course, we know I'm blanking on all the names. We know this guy who lost his life. He had the black fluid coming out of his mouth. Do you remember his name?
No, I don't know that story.
Yeah, you would know if I said him. Danny Sheehan over here.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, Robert David Steele here. Corey Good. I'm not sure if he belongs in there. That's what I mean. Like, I put people in there.
Yeah, you didn't evaluate, right?
Not as proof of anything.
Yeah.
Dr. Judy Wood over here.
That's a big one.
Yeah. I wasn't proving anything. I was just saying, what do you think, people? Why don't you take a look at this topic and get into it,
Yeah.
I think it's great. Yeah, Jeremy Corbell, he's a little thicker in the face now these days, and his beard has some white stripes in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great one of him.
Yeah.
They're all great.
I know Grant is in here, but he's hiding on me. Do you see him?
It's like, where's Waldo? I found him and now he's gone.
Two down and one across from Corbell.
Oh, okay. From
Two down and one across. Bingo.
Two down and one across. Wait, 1, 2. Oh, there he is. Okay, there's Grant. Grant, I don't blame. I know you probably don't like your portrait because I can't stand my portrait. If anybody paints my portrait, I don't want to see it.
Even though I don't really look at it, I'm still honored that that somebody of your quality would paint it. It's like, oh my goodness! It's like, holy cow!
Yeah.
Oh, this is Spears. What's his name?
I don't know.
Mark Spears, or
I don't know a lot of these people.
Yeah, he was. he was offed. That was sad. This is Schiff, Robert Schiff, or someone, who's CIA guy. He came out and whistle blew about a bunch of stuff. Colin Andrews is back here. See him back there?
Oh yeah, yeah.
On the left.
I saw Lear. You captured his spookiness.
Yeah. Travis Walton, Dr. Edgar Mitchell on the very top left.
Yeah.
Yeah. But talking about a little bit earlier, I'm sure you're probably bored by now, but talking about the idea of keeping an open mind, I just wanted to say something real quick. I donated my time to a guy that I know is a DJ in this area. He runs a radio show at night in the city, and he photographs a ton of things that most people say, you got to be kidding me. They're balloons. They're just balloons. Okay. And he says, Doug, no, I'm telling you, you got to take a look at this closer. So I'm open-minded enough to do an interview with him. And he interviewed me about all his photos. And I looked at a lot of his photos and his films. And I likened it to something that Colin Andrews showed me once. And I love Colin. He's been great. And Colin Andrews showed me a paper bag. I don't know if you guys ever saw this paper bag floating through the sky that Colin Andrews posted many years ago. But I'll tell you, you watch this paper bag and it goes down, it comes around, it comes lower, it stops, it backs up, then it comes this way, then it stops, then it goes like this. This is supposed to be a paper bag just floating around in the air, and yet it's so perplexing to me how a paper bag could do that. And so to the average person, I'd say 1 out of 100 would only pick up on that and say, maybe there's something to it. And I like to be that person that keeps an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, beautiful.
Reminds me of, what's the movie where a film student is filming a bag caught in some wind, and I think that's how the movie opens and closes, and there's just like the line, like, life is beautiful, and how he could find a beautiful moment just in that. So, and it's an inspirational.
That wasn't like, because I know Forrest Gump had something floating in the beginning in that.
No, I'll have to think on it here. I have Christmas movies on my brain right now. That's the only thing I'm thinking about.
Forrest Gump had a feather. A feather flies in and it takes off, and it's like opens this wonderful vista of imagination.
Yeah.
And
I think American Beauty with Kevin Spacey was in it, and a very young girl actress who was kind of groundbreaking at the time. It was her boyfriend in the film. He filmed all these odd sequences of events, and it was a great part of the movie. And this has been a great interview, Doug. I'm glad we've kind of dug in a little deeper than how we've been able to chat in the past, and we're gonna bring you back on, and we're gonna do another hour or hour and a half and devote that to just music. So it's wonderful that we can kind of do these in segments, and I hope you'll join some of our panel discussions when we have them as well, so you can talk with some other artists and share some ideas then.
I would love to, and I think that one of the fascinating things when we get into music is how the music comes through me, and then once it's done, I can't even play one of my own songs. I would have to relearn it, and that's a perplexing thing for me to even explain to somebody. I don't know how I could have written the entire song, played it on the piano, and yet if I look at the piano and someone says, "Hey, Doug, play me that one that you wrote for," I would not know where to begin. And that it actually partially scares me, because it makes me wonder what I have. Like, is that a skill? Or am I just channeling something, or what is it? So
it reminds me of how I hear channelers describe their experience, but that's a rabbit hole I need to dive in further myself. So we'll go in there together, Doug.
All right, Nicole, that's great. And Grant, always good to see you, and just keep me posted on anything that you're doing that you think I'd find interesting to join you in on. We can also talk about the Chandra story next time that I had in my loft, which is still an amazing memory that I have as far as an experiencer of something goes. And I've never been able to explain that.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
And we'll bring Nancy on with that one as well, so she can.
Yeah,
She's
we'll get in touch with her.
yeah,
Ah,
she's pretty. What would do with the word you use for Nancy? She tells a good story. I mean, you can tell her she's not making it up. She's very emotional. So I'm
I
looking
think
forward.
I think I was in a rabbit hole session with her as well. So she can speak well on her experiences.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
all
well,
right. Well, next time is going to be even more fun. And I think we can wrap it up for tonight. If you want to hang on, I'll end the video and then we can say other goodbyes. But
all right, I'll hang on. I'll sit here. I'm up late enough as it is.
all right. But this was